Can can you see that? Okay. 12:47. Hey there folks, and welcome to this video, and here I'm going to be talking about Enter Shikari and their new album Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible. Though if you clicked on the video you probably knew that already. I am actually wearing an Enter Shikari shirt. I have a few of them, but it took me a while to search through the wardrobe for it. We've been picking out shirts that weren't even mine. But yeah, 43 minutes, 43 seconds. I am actually recording this, you probably saw in our first clip, just after having done a first listen. So this isn't like a full review or any kind of critique or anything like that. I am a genuine Shikari fan, which is the reason why I sat down for it. So I am basically going to be talking about how much I love it. But yeah, it starts off with The Great Unknown. Is this a new beginning? The new sound for it, where it slowly builds up, feels a bit like Ammo, the Bring Me Horizon album. And then when you get to the breakdown, it feels a bit more like A Flash Flood of Colour or Minesweep. That starts to feel a bit more like what you'd recognise as a kind of more Shikari-ish sound. Then you get into Crossing the Rubicon, the second track, which for me feels sonically like the Spark of the Minesweep in terms of how it behaves. And in fact, the way that it interacts with the Great Unknown reminded me of how the One True Colour interacts with the Appeal of Minesweep. Now, for me, that makes it feel more like it's an album that shows the evolution of Shikari. Whereas the Spark did, oh, we're going to go back to using kind of analog synths. It was still a bit of an evolution on the Minesweep. This album feels a bit like it's got the evolution of the Minesweep plus the evolution of the Spark. It seems like it's bringing those kind of two more distinct sounds together, and I really like that. Then you get into the Dreamers Hotel, first release, and I was going back through it. Shikari seemed to have this kind of obsession with track 3 or sometimes track 4 being the first release. I mean, I'm thinking, what, Snake Pit? Live Outside? Of course, there were also, like, Juggernauts, and at the same time, there's The Last Garrison. But of course, The Anaesthetist was also a single off of the Minesweep, so what do I know? I have to say though, even though I've heard it so many times, it doesn't get boring, and the Will of the People line stands out to me every single time. Then we get into track 4, which is the first waltzing off the face of the earth. Again into waltz, so 3/4, and I like the fact that it is a waltz. It stresses that it's going to be a 3/4 time signature, which for me is pretty cool. The way in which the lyrics are delivered by Rao does create some disorientation, especially because you're sitting in between, I think they're 2 4/4 tracks. So it does create this kind of disorientation. Also, the way that the instrumentation does the same thing. I liked things like the references to Animal Farms, talk about like personal freedoms and liberties, and like giving kind of examples that people would be able to look towards a bit more. Having Nothing Is True and Everything Is Possible in there as well, kind of, for me, showcases Shikari's ideology and mentality. Not that that is exactly hidden from their other music. Modern Living has... I felt the synths kind of bringing the power, and then the guitar being a melodic thing on top. The bass, of course, working with the synths in a lot of the places, and I think in the breakdown being a lot more distinct, where I didn't feel like it was so much in the verses. And then it ends with this kind of rhythm, which I felt was quite anthemic. Then you got the breakdown of Apocalypse Anonymous, which for me felt like really early Shikari. I'll be talking about early Shikari stuff a bit more in a minute, but it felt like The Lions Are Out the Door from Common Dreads, or the reprises, which again I'll be talking about in a minute, from Take to the Skies. Brushes On felt for me a lot like two tracks off of the Spark, Shinrin Yoku and Undercover Agents, in terms of how the synths are. But the instrumentation, the kind of guitar and bass shows the evolution of the sound. One of the things I really noticed here was Rolfie's drums, because they felt a bit more kind of spread out, like how each bit of it was panned. And that was pretty cool. I mean, that was the only track where I particularly noticed it, but it's going to be there all over the album. That's general just music production things. It's just more distinct here. And then I said reprises. Reprise 3. I like the fact that it's called Reprise 3 with a number 3, because if you look up the track listing for the United States version of Take to the Skies, Reprise 1 and Reprise 2 have 1 and 2 spelled out as words. So the reference is there, especially, you know, the the fact that it's got the lyrics from you know, Shikari folklore, you know, the kind of, and still we will be here standing like statues. And it's got that sound. For those of you not particularly familiar with this, the kind of synth that's there, which is also in Take to the Skies, was, I believe it still is, basically in every single Shikari album. Usually in the introduction to the album. So it's in it's called Common Dreads, in the first track of Common Dreads. It's in System from System Meltdown. It's in the Imperial Minesweep 1, and I think I personally see it in the Spark of the Spark. T.I.N.A kind of leads in from Reprise 3, which I'm going to presume they're going to do live. And for me, where it slots into the album has this kind of, remember this is us now. And I honestly love it. I could just imagine, you know, when at the end of the kind of verses and choruses where you hear the kind of breakdown, I could just see Round just flinging a mic around, just yeeting it into the sky. And then the lyrics as well, like the In Disguise bit feels for me like some earlier Shikari stuff. It's not really something that came up thematically in the last couple of albums. Like, there's stuff that every artist has. I mean, Linkin Park, for example, my favourite band, have had this kind of, I think Shinoda had this thing where he was talking about water, and then he stopped, I think, at 1,000 Studies, like, okay, I'm going to stop doing, like, water metaphors and analogies in songs. After that, you got the Elegy for Extinction, a slow melodic piece with a lot of kind of assonance, and then right at the end it goes into this kind of more dissonant thing where you've got the strings going into a more minor key and you've got all of these other noises around. Which, yeah, sums up the title. Then you've got the two Marionettes tracks. The first one, I feel, has this kind of simple beginning and then starts to build up, where it's like those in power neglect, those are in power over, and then the building up and evolving, and it even changes sonically. Then you've got this get it together message staying the same, really. Then the second bit changes again at the start, which shows why there are two separate tracks. If somebody's looking for a big old long track off of this album, I'd probably say you could combine the two Marionettes tracks just because name, but they are still distinct tracks. I mean, they also have distinct phases inside the distinct tracks, but they are still distinct tracks. It has the next part of the story, like the kind of where do they lead. Again, you got the 3/4 signature, and I think it adds punch to Rao's lyrics. Was it Truth Hurts, now you know Truth Threes? The mantra at the end, that sticks much better for me because of the fact that it's 3/4. Then you've got Satellites. I found that Rory's guitar tone here was pretty reminiscent of tracks like Torn Apart, with the melodies in the verse and kind of rhythm in the chorus. It also gives me similar vibes to some of the B tracks, so like, if you think The Zone, again, I'm going back very early Shikari here, it gives me that kind of feel. And then you have The King, which, like T.I.N.A, but not necessarily like Dreamers Hotel, feels different as a single to as it does on the album. And you can tell in the album that it is the kind of climax to it. Of course, one of the things that never changes for me is how much I love the Shikari banter in it. Just before the choruses, where you have an hour torn hamstring, and then you have Rao just belting out a curse. It's wonderful. It reminds me of tracks like The Jester. And then you've got Waltzing Off the Face of the Earth again, the second part of it wrapping up the album. One of the things I like about it is the start of it kind of invites us in. It's like the start of a kind of opera, and I really like that. It makes you feel like you're part of a grander audience. And it also gave me some very similar vibes to other Shikari tracks that tend to either be like the kind of climax of the album or the end of the album. The Revolt of the Atoms is one where you have all of the screaming in the background of the Everything is Crumbling, which I still haven't deciphered after 3 years. But the fact that it ends that way just feels beautiful. It feels very apt. And also very Shikari. And then the kind of percussive bits at the end, I felt were very much like fireworks. A bit like how you had the embers and the fire crackling at the end of the spark. Yeah, honestly, I love this. I really do. I think it's become a stronger message, given the times we're currently in. What with the way that the people in power are being in power. But I think that was going to be the same anyways. I just think that that sticks out a bit more like a sore thumb right now. And I think Shikari was always going to hit the nail on the head. But they've done it much more visibly with this album. Check out a link to Shikari's YouTube, as well as a link to Spotify, link to listen to the album down below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for listening to my thoughts. I hope you stick around. I'm hoping to make more video on this channel because I haven't for a while. But you can also find my main channel in the description. Thank you, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye bye for now.